Did the British steal trillions of dollars from India? A video we're going to watch today says that they did. This was recommended by a viewer in a comment. If you have any recommendations, please let me know in the comments below. Hey, you gotta go? The cow's peeing right out there. Say hello to YouTube. Before we watch, India's history. Wow. One of the most beautiful things about living in India for 2 years has been its complex and long history. America is so young in comparison. I've tried other ways to update myself on Indian history. For instance, reading Nehru's The Discovery of India. 630 pages. This was such a good background overview by one of the founders of the country. I will say it's not, if you're looking for a page turner, this is not it. It was a tough read, and reading it before bed, it actually was helpful in that sense. But it had some goldmine information that for someone who was interested and wanted to know more and get a sense for the culture, had a lot of gems in it. For instance, Arrian, the Greek historian of Alexander's campaign in North India, one of the conquerors, probably stole some from India too, he was struck by the lightheartedness of the Indian people. He says, "No nation is fonder of singing and dancing than India." If you're looking for a quicker read, Midnight's Children, it's a novel, it's fictional, yet it's based on actual historical events that happened in India. The New York Review of Books says it's one of the most important books to come out of the English-speaking world in this generation. Anyways, let's get to this video.
There is a kind of half-assed liberal idea that while colonialism wasn't great, at least Britain gave India the trains. And maybe that's something they should be thankful for. After all, trains are pretty useful, especially in the 7th largest country on Earth. So, colonialism, maybe not all that bad? Unfortunately, Britain also stole...
I can't see how an argument for colonialism would be painted in a positive light.
$45 trillion from India, all the while exploiting religious divisions.
I'm curious how they got the $45 trillion.
Religious divisions between the Hindu and Muslim communities and further turning them against each other. And those beloved railways, they became the sites of mass slaughter while Britain sat back and watched. And ways to
I'm getting distracted because she's walking down this empty alleyway, which I'm assuming is in Britain. But as someone who vlogs, I'm like, you know, in India, there's no streets like that. There's always tons of people. So that's nice that she can film this video in such a quiet place. Anyways.
Exploited resources like cotton and coal more efficiently around India. And it worked. Between 1853 and 1924, a railway network was created to help Britain extract from India relentlessly. And it's not like we gave India the railways either, by the way. We made India pay for them, and we ripped them off in the process. Despite Indian mechanics having their own...
I have heard some terrible things about what Winston Churchill did to India. I've watched some of the films about the time of around India's Independence Day and the partition, and it paints him in a different light than what you typically hear, which he's typically painted in America as the hero of World War II who stood up to the Nazis.
Efficient, cheap designs, Britain made India buy trains from them. Between 1854 and 1947, over 14,000 locomotives were imported from the UK to India. Initially, Indians weren't even allowed to work on the trains. They were staffed entirely by white people, from the board directors to the ticket collectors. The railways made little profit.
I mentioned some of the books that I've read about India. I've also read other novels that aren't about India's history per se. And it's weird to see the inherent sort of racism within them, the differences in society. Same thing happens when I read in books from the past in America, the way black people were treated.
But British shareholders who invested in its construction made vast returns, guaranteed at the expense of Indian taxpayers who had to pay for it. India's railways were basically like someone burgling your house, building a ramp to wheel all your stuff out, sending you a bill for that ramp, and expecting a round of applause at the end of it. Now that the railways were built, Britain could get down to the task at hand, squeezing India for every last ounce of profit. They were really good at it. In the 1600s, when the East India Company was established, Britain accounted for less than 2% of the world's GDP, while India accounted for almost a quarter of it. By the 18th century, Britain had become one of the most powerful empires in the world, while the prosperity of the Mughal Empire was fading fast. Britain relentlessly squeezed India for every last bit of resource for its own uses. In 1943, up to 4 million Bengalis starved to death, partly because their food was diverted towards British soldiers during World War II. Winston Churchill.
In Gandhi's autobiography, I think he talked about the situation in Bengal and the starvation there. And it's heartbreaking to hear.
Churchill said the famine was their own fault for breeding like rabbits. After it was no longer profitable to remain in India, and after receiving huge pressure from the Indian independence movement, the British finally left in 1947. Before they went, they split the country into two.
It's sad to think how people felt about other people.
Hindu-majority India and Muslim-majority Pakistan in an act that became known as partition. But in their haste to get out of the country, British diplomats arranged a shoddy partition agreement that ignored the fact there would be interreligious conflict. Cyril Radcliffe, the British lawyer assigned to draw the borders of Pakistan and India, was given 40 days to do it. After partition, millions of...
There was a movie on Netflix recently about that process, and it was eye-opening, to say the least. As someone, America's independence is thought of in very strong, positive terms, of course, and to watch what happened after the partition it's heartbreaking. I know there's a lot of books. There's another one, Train to Pakistan, and I'm still just grasping what happened and trying to learn about it from an outside perspective.
Of Muslims trekked to Pakistan in what is now known as Bangladesh, while Indians and Sikhs headed the other way. Violence between Pakistan and India ensued. Within a year of the British leaving, 15 million people were displaced, and between 1 and 2 million people were dead. Trains became the sites for mass murder during the migration. Trains filled with refugees crossing the border on each side were stopped, and everyone on board was murdered. Women were captured and raped. Carriages were set on fire with petrol, with people still inside. The only ones spared were the drivers.
There's been so many. I mentioned the Train to Pakistan book. The way they describe it is so moving, and I can only imagine, what that must have been like.
So they could transport their trains full of dead bodies to the final destination. The British knew about the train massacres, but they'd already washed their hands clean of India. Prime Minister Clement Attlee, writing to Lord Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India in 1947, said, "Keep India united if you can. If not, save something from the wreck. In any case, get Britain out." Despite all this, the 4 million starved to death, the careless partition, the $45 trillion.
Wow, she's pulling no punches here. Yikes.
They stole from the Indian people. Many don't think that the British did anything wrong in India. A YouGov poll in 2014 found that 59% of respondents thought the British Empire was something to be proud of, and only 19% were ashamed of its misdeeds. Trains, cricket, empire. What could possibly be wrong with that?
Wow. I don't, about the 59% of the people being proud of the British Empire, since I've been living in India for so long, I feel in a sense more identified with what the Indian perspective would be versus like the British perspective. And I can see why in some of the comments on my videos that there's obvious anger and resentment towards someone who's making videos about their country. I mean, because I think some people think I'm British maybe. So it makes sense. One thing that I've noticed in India and has been a challenge is that you're further so bad things happen in the US as well, bad, terrible things. However, I've always been quite removed from them. And one thing about India is that you're much more closer to the bad things. And I think the reason why I'm feeling emotion is because as you're walking around, it can be quite heartbreaking at times. And I've been here for a while, so you get used to it on some level. But I have noticed that I think for a lot of people, certain people you meet on the street who are in a life situation that is very difficult for you to imagine yourself in, to see it so often, and to watch a video like this is sort of bringing up like how tragic life can be at times. And as someone who's been living here for quite a while, it's something that, you know, I don't know if I ever tasted's not the right word, I don't know why I said that, but ever experienced in America as much. You know, in Austin, Texas, there are, you know, poor people living on the streets. You go through, I lived on the east side of town, and on the west side of town, you go underneath the highway, and there's a lot of people who have a lot of problems and are homeless living, maybe are addicted to drugs, and it's a difficult area to be. But that's one of the only areas, and there's a lot of areas where you would never see anybody like that. And same thing with India. I'm not sure what I'm trying to get at, but basically, let's try to wrap it up here. Watching this video and understanding what the Indian people had to go through during that period, and what a lot of people still go through, can be very heartbreaking. And I wish I don't have anything more to say, I guess, about that. I know this wasn't one of my Usually I make really positive videos because I'm feeling really positive. I'm looking forward to getting back out there. In my last video, I went and tasted a bunch of juices, and I may have got a stomach infection or a stomach bug from that because I've been caught a sickness for the past couple days. So that's why we're going to do this type of video this time. But next week we're going to be getting back out there and making more videos and seeing more beautiful India. If you like this video, please click the like button. Looking forward to seeing you in our next video. Hey, say hello to YouTube. Hey, hello, Vanakkam.